All right, so we just end up buying a landscaping business in Buford, Georgia, and this is 90 days basically post closing and what the operations look like, what our game plan was, and give you guys a deep dive in the world of M&A. So, first things first, we end up closing the business back in January 2nd, and basically it's April 11th, so about a little over 90 days, but we want to give you guys an understanding of what 90 days look like, what our goals were, where we wanted to basically project, and then where is it now. And I'll let Forrest talk about the operations of the business and kind of how he saw basically his goals on where he wanted to be in 90 days. So I'll just pass it over to you, Forrest, and you can just take it away from there.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Phil. You start with pretty high expectations and you want everything done yesterday. I think one of the things that I learned from the first 90 days is that it takes sometimes a little bit longer to get change really implemented. I think the first 90 days, especially the first 60, is really just understanding the current operations they have. And I think that the best way to do it is to not flip the table on day one and kind of turn everything upside down and say, we're doing it all this way now, but rather to understand how they're doing it from like a deeper level and then look for ways to improve it or to bring it up to current technology. In the first 90 days, I was hoping to get the previous owner out of the day to day. I think if it was a bigger business, we might have been able to do that, but it's still somewhat of a tall order just because of how integral he is. I'm thinking by the end of this next quarter, the second quarter, we'll pretty much have him out because the first quarter ended up being largely like building a foundation. So we built a foundation for like our sales pipeline was a huge piece. So out and go high level, we have a pipeline in there. Even before we even get to that, we had to figure out what does the sales process look like.
Yeah.
Because now it's like we have a definite pipeline. We have like we maybe even throw a screenshot or something on there, but we have definite stages. Like the first stage is inquiry, means they came in. Second stage is connected, means we've talked to them. Third stage is discovery call. Is like, hey, they talk to the previous owner who can kind of get a sense of if it's a project we even want to look at. Then we move them over to an estimate where he goes to the property and looks at it and then gives them a bid. And then the follow up to close is like, hey, do you want to still move forward with this project? And then once they say yes, we move into job accepted and then goes to job complete and paid. So like even just defining that process took us quite a while to actually dial that in. As far as like growth strategy, a lot of it was just, again, getting the foundation in place. They didn't have a website. They didn't have a Google profile. They had nothing, no social media profiles, absolutely zero online. So we created all of those from scratch. I think our website looks pretty nice. Just all those different things that we thought we could just knock out. Just, it takes time to do all that stuff. I was hoping to do a 20% revenue increase in the first quarter. That's usually my goal. We were a little short just because with him being like the sole operator, it's like you get a bunch of business and then or you like prospect for business and get a bunch of business and then you actually fulfill the work and then you stopped prospecting for your pipeline. So you get the up and down and up and down. And his December was one of his biggest months of the last year. So then January ended up being only half as much as it was the previous year, or like I think it was a 40% in the hole that we were on day one, but then we worked on getting it up. And I think we're on pace to be over last year for this month by like 50%.
And, that's a great overview. Just kind of recapped here, the foundation was one thing, getting online presence was basically main priority, working through that and then understanding the sale process of, we'll call him, John here, for instance, in regards to the seller, getting his sales process basically in go high level and onto a CRM. And then also, we had struggles, or I would say struggles in regards to finding key employees, right? You didn't mention that, but can you kind of speak on the expectations and then the reality of how things turn out for us?
Yeah, we've never had an issue getting applicants because we know how to market, but just finding the right fit for someone who can do it. I think another issue was the right offer. So we were trying to get away with paying, like the minimum that we could. So I think we went through 2 or 3 different people in the beginning of people we thought were going to start, and then they get counter offers or.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think you might have skipped over this, but what was the first 90 days? What was the expectation? And then kind of where did reality set in for all of us?
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying about like I thought we could knock it all, like
Yeah.
knock everything out in 90 days and like have the owner out of the operations. And it just takes a little bit longer to really understand the operations and then build our own system to work them out.
Yeah.
I think in the future we could probably do it closer to that timeline, but first go, it's basically taking twice as long as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is that since one thing that I will say about, UForce, you have a good team that you brought into the business. And I don't think a lot of people understand like team is everything in this particular sector because you had like a sales guy that came in that did a lot of the sales work, did a lot of heavy lifting, and he calls continuously every single day. He's a beast. And then you have a back end guy where it does all the integration of Google, Go High Level. So if you're listening to this like a sole entrepreneur, if like a solo individual and you want to buy like a landscaping company, just know that our success comes from the background that people like you guys don't even that are not on this call, right? That help us succeed and growing the business at a better pace than you would normally as an individual. And we also have a CFO. Our team is very like spread out, so it doesn't have to be just one person. And I mean, you can kind of speak on that and how you kind of found all of those members to collaborate on this particular business, just so people have an understanding context of like, how are we getting these numbers? Because for me, if I'm listening to this, I'm like, dude, I can do it by myself. I can do all the marketing, I can do all the website designing, and then getting sales. It's way too much. So
Mhm.
yeah, you can speak on that just a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be a heavy lift. I say that it's what we do. I always try to use that pronoun because it is a team. It's always we. I would kind of see myself as maybe a quarterback or a head coach, but they're the ones out on the field who are actually like doing the plays and doing the blocking and tackling, and you know, uh, they really push the things forward.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the people who came from my marketing agency who are kind of switched over. I came to a crossroads for the agency of like, do I want to kind of change niches once I realized the niche I was in wasn't probably going to get me to where I wanted to go? Do I start over with like a new niche, or do I just start buying some companies and implement all the team we have into that? And that is what I decided to go with, and how we were able to close the business so fast and kind of grow it a little more quickly.
And Noble and I got turned on to. I'm sure Noble knew about this too before the EOS system, entrepreneurial operating system, about meetings, about structuring meetings. And Noble and I talked about it before doing partners with you, Forrest, and we're like, dude, we'd be very interested in learning more, developing our understanding about it. And can you kind of speak to what that system is, our weekly meetings, and like kind of how we define goals and how we achieve those goals on a weekly basis, quarterly basis, and a yearly basis?
Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up because I actually listened to an interview with Gina Wickman this morning
Oh yeah.
on Tommy Mello's podcast. But yeah, so EOS is Entrepreneurial Operating System. The easiest way to think of it is like think about like you got Windows as an operating system for your PC. You got EOS is your operating system for your business. So it's how you do your meetings, how you do your goals, kind of how you get everybody operating. And the old saying is like, how do you get everybody rowing in the same direction? So it's a way that we can kind of all keep organized and everybody knows like their role and their responsibility and their part. So it's a spot where it breaks down largely to a quarter, and we're trying to do our quarterly rocks, or like rocks are goals that we have for the quarter of something that we want to knock out, and then we also keep track of like the weekly progress towards that. So usually you'll come up with a goal like we want to do revenue growth, or we want to get the SOPs in place for this quarter, and then we'll work and meet weekly for an hour a week to say like how are we doing on these goals. And then it's also the time that we talk about the wins. We always start off with wins. Hey, what's going on? It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be related to this company or whatever else. But it's like let's start off with wins. Then we go through our rocks. We usually have two, three, sometimes four at most. You don't really want to do more than that. Maybe three is the sweet spot or less. And we say, are we on track for our goals? Yes, no, why? And then after that, we go through IDS, which is like figuring out problems. So if a problem arises, sometimes it's something where you work out immediately on the spot, but a lot of times if it's like a bigger, more systemic problem, we just all talk about it. We always make those meetings. It's like a very like committed time.
Yeah.
And then that's for us to go through all the progress.
Yeah, it's been very beneficial understanding the operation of the business, where it's at. Also, just it's really organized. So it keeps everybody accountable as well. Noble, what's your thoughts on the EOS system that Noble's turned us on to?
Well, first of all, I would just like to give props to Forrest. You know, this is our first 90 days like working together on this capacity, and to see that obviously I knew you're capable, but just to see you in action and putting everything together, putting the team together, and EOS is, I feel like it's a great platform to use. So I really really dig it. I think it's super awesome.
Okay. It's really good for like just knowing where we're at and where each person plays their role, right? Because there was like the operations is me, M&A is you guys. You give your update every week, and then everyone just knows what their job is, and it makes it super clear. Like, here's where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. And before we transition to the M&A sector or space that Noble and I are doing, the one thing that I think I glanced over was the transition of the owner, right? Because isn't that like also like a pivotal point? And I know you spent a lot of time with the owner just through our meetings, but I just want to give the audience there or the listeners an understanding of what you've been doing with the owner, like how much time you've been spending, what you've been spending your time on, and getting an idea of what that whole picture looks like for like a person that might be buying a mom and pop shop and in this position of what they could potentially be doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a really great point, because especially for maybe businesses on like the slightly smaller side, you're spending a lot of time with them. And I would just caution people that like you should really like the seller and like get along with them and be able to work with them, because it's not like you exchange money and it's done. Maybe with some of the larger ones with middle management, you can do that to some degree, but like for anything that is of the size that we're working with, you're with them for a while, and you're gonna be working with them kind of day in, day out, especially the beginning. So you want to make sure that like, they're good people, you get along with them, you can work with them well. So like there's just certain duties like billing, for instance. Like he would do the billing. Immediately we took that off his plate and said, you don't need to do the billing anymore. We'll take care of that. Like every single piece we could find that he didn't have to be the one doing it, we took it off the plate. And it's not like we took everything off on day one, but we just start chipping away and said, what are the things that only he can do? I call it highest and best use. We have a good relationship with him. He wants to kind of stay in the business 1 to 2 days a week. So we're cool with that. And he'll only do high value things. Like it's basically like the estimates and kind of that final sale process where he kind of just shows them, we know what we're doing and here's how much it's going to cost. But even that's more on the construction side. Even on like the maintenance side, we're going to take that off his plate, where anybody can kind of look at a yard and say, hey, it's going to take us 20 minutes. Here's the price. So we're just working him on that. And in the beginning, there were some long stretches. I mean, I would sit at the table, at his kitchen table, for 3 or 4 hours at a time, trying to get everything out of his head. That was the other thing I was trying to do, is everything that's in his head needs to come out of it and go into a digital form. So he's scheduling the calendar of jobs on this notebook that he has. And I'm like, yeah, that works for you and one other guy. But when we have 3 crews and they need to know what's on the docket for today and your notebook is at home, what do we do then? So we're just like moving that to a Google Calendar. It's, moving all the customer info, where he has like some of them in his phone, some of them in QuickBooks. It's like, no, we have one central database that has all the information about all the customers, figuring out how much he charges them, how long each property takes, what the effective man-hour rate is if you divide the two, and just getting all that stuff out of his head and into a source where multiple people can access it. That has really been key. And the CRM is a huge piece of that. We finally taught him how to start using it and got him in the habit of using it, because again, it works if he's just telling one other person something, but as soon as you need to relay information to multiple people, you multiply that conversation by that many times. So now you got to tell like 4 people the same thing. Whereas if you can just post it in one spot, they can just check for themselves. So that's the big piece that we were working on.
Yeah, it sounds like you spent like at least 40, 60 hours with him so far, potentially?
Probably all in, yeah, because we do a weekly call. If you do calls, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when people think like, oh, it's going to be an easy peasy transition, it's probably most likely not, based on what Forrest spoke about, because he spent time, and plus he moved down there too as well. So he's actually in his new apartment, beautiful view, as you can see. And so yeah, it's a lot of work. So I'll just, anything else to add, Noble, Forrest, to that by chance? No? That's good. Okay. So let's, one last thing here. So when we all acquired the business, right, what was the like revenues from last year compared to this year, how much, let's just say the first quarter, let's just be generalized here. How much was the first quarter of last year? Do you happen to know? And then compared to it, what we've maybe take it over?
And you want cumulative or per month?
Like I would say an increase of a cumulative of quarterly, like where was it at, like percentage
Yeah.
wise? And then like how much have you grown it in the first quarter compared to last first quarter?
Yeah. So, like I said, the first month we were on the back end of
Yep.
his pipeline slump. So we were down 43% in the first month.
Yeah.
So we were digging out of a hole. The next month we were up 20%, and then the next month we were up 15%. But that still puts us basically even
Right.
because we're in a hole in that one. This month we're on pace. I take it back. I said 50%. If we do what is on the calendar, we're going to double last April.
So
So
100%.
100%, 102% for this month. And then we're on pace to maybe do, 60% the month after that, and then maybe another doubling if we do well. So that would be, 50 back to cumulative for 50%. So we're digging out of that hole, but this quarter will be 50% at least, or probably more, but that'll
Right.
backfill our original hole.
And do you have a projection for this year?
Yeah, so I got like my realistic goal is
Yep.
like 70% increase. The goal that I really want is I want to double it.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to double it. But if I hit 70%, I'll be happy.
And I will say about marketing too as well. We did all the online advertisements, but that's not the main draw. I mean, that was a foundation, but we also spend money on ads, right? Angie, and then do we spend money on Facebook? Oh, not Facebook.
We do now,
Google.
yeah. Yeah, we just started those.
I mean, I would actually love for you to explain, if you like, about some of the marketing strategies that you've implemented since you've come from that background on this particular business, so people that are in the home space sector can actually learn from you, Forrest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say leads is one thing. People like to talk about leads and lead sources and advertising, but the real thing that we focused on in the first quarter was the foundation, right? Because if you don't call the leads and follow up with them and text them and email them and follow up, like I think our cutoff is 10 times before we give up on a lead. So that's a piece where people really drop the ball. If I would say there's one thing that people drop the ball from a marketing agency is like we generate leads for the customers and the customers don't call them, and then they're mad at us that they don't have sales, but the leads aren't going to call themselves. Our goal for this quarter is we're getting a lot from Angie's List, which is awesome. It's a good source. The Angie ads is definitely better than the Angie leads. They're sister companies. I forget. One of them used to be Home Service Advisor or something like that, or Home Advisor, and they bought it, and now it's Angie's. But ads is definitely the better one. Mm-hmm. And that was doing the majority of our leads, but we wanted to diversify. So our goal this quarter is to bring that down to 50%. So basically double our leads, but from outside sources. So we've done some mailers and letters. We've gotten a few leads from there. We do Google ads. We do SEO. We've gotten some organic leads through like the Google business page and from like search. We've gotten a few from there. And now we're also running Facebook ads too. And we get referrals. And I'm trying to really empower or enable our actual foremen, the guys on the job, to go and knock on a door. Like, for instance, there was a job we did where it was a drainage problem, and we fixed it for the one guy, but they saw the other guy's backyard that it was adjacent to was even worse than his. So they go and knock on his door and say, hey, we fixed your neighbors. You want us to do yours too? So just like little things like that, giving them business cards, giving them flyers to hand out to knock on doors, say, hey, we work with your neighbor, happy to do yours too. We got some yard signs as well to put up while we're working, and wrapping the truck. All those little things will add up too.
You're right. Okay. Well, great. Those are the topics I want to discuss about employees, but we can switch over here in a bit. We can circle back out to that. So let's just jump into the M&A space and kind of give you basically guys an idea of what our goal was in the first 90 days of acquiring this business. And basically our main top line goal was to acquire another one or go under an LOI per se. And I'll talk to, or I'll pass it over to Noble just to give you guys an idea of what he did to further along that goal, to kind of achieve that goal. So over to you, Noble.
Yeah. So pretty much the first goal was for us to just really like cold call and do the things that we normally do, and kind of start off on a kind of a smaller scale. And so, I would say the first quarter, we had some good leads that came in, right? But they may not fit for whatever reason. Like we decided to kind of step back in terms of targeting tree companies, right? So that was something that we were targeting. We have a few tree companies that we're talking to, but we decided that it'd probably be smarter for us to start with something that has kind of a better synergy. So the marketing that we did was the same that we initially got this deal from, was using like softwares, like B2B softwares. And there are I would say a few out there that are pretty good. Like I mentioned last time, I used like Nimbler. Nimbler's pretty good. It's decent. And also I pulled some data from Apollo and some other softwares. But yeah, mainly just really doing cold calling and texting, I believe. And you guys have been doing email marketing, right?
Yeah,
So,
we've been doing some email marketing, and then also with those softwares that Noble mentioned, you can also do data enrichment in the M&A space world, or like skip tracing in the real estate world. You can just find the owner's data and calling them that way. I think it was with you, Forrest, or Noble, that you also end up telling us to just target brokers too, right? And we're like, oh no shit, duh, right?
yeah.
They're the one of the deals. So those are the ways that we've kind of basically utilized as a strategy for acquiring or targeting other businesses. Now we are in serious talks, right, for us, from another company that we're looking to buy. We're basically almost at the finish line. Could you speak to kind of where the negotiations are on, where that's at?
Yeah, I'd say we're close. I sent them an offer. They came back with a counter. I came back with a counter to the counter, and then they came back with the counter to that one. And it's still not quite there. So I told them, what they're asking for breaks our cover ratio. It's just too low for us. But we're open to ideas. So I made a few suggestions, and I said I'm open to ideas if you guys have any. I haven't heard back from them, but it's a decent deal for us because it's commercial landscaping. At the end of the day, it really comes down to the cover ratio and what the business cash flow can allow for us to do. And I don't really like going below 2 for the cover ratio. I'll go as low as maybe 1.7, but I'm not that interested in a 1.5 because there's other ones out there that are higher, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for all the brokers that are out there listening to this, we want landscaping companies in the Beaufort area. So if you guys have any landscaping companies, feel free to let us know. Okay, great. Anything else to add to that, Noble, by chance?
No, just pretty much our focus now, this quarter. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was about to jump into that. But yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, pretty much just focusing on, like I said, kind of staying targeted and focusing on obviously broker deals, but we're going to add some new channels to our marketing, potentially Facebook. Cold calling is cool. We obviously don't want to stay in that zone too long. That's just kind of just to get us started. But I like to look at it as omni marketing, like omnipresent marketing, where you're doing multiple different strategies in terms of marketing: email, cold call, Facebook, SEO, all that stuff. So eventually I think we're going to open that up, but we're just kind of testing things out. But this quarter, we're going to go a little harder.
Yeah.
On that. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So just kind of piggyback off what you said, this quarter we're looking to open up Facebook ads. Noble and I specialize in this particular sector. So I think creating an ad out there and kind of testing the living crap out of it in the local area of where we're looking to buy at is going to be a great strategy. Maybe spend $10 a day every day for the next X amount of time, or until we each reach another budget per se, and see how the ad runs and tests based on lead. And then that's basically our 90 days. It's just to really continuously hunt these companies down, to acquire them, submit an LOI. Once we submit an LOI, then obviously our due diligence starts, and then we're looking to acquire another company and growing the business through an additional revenue source and customer list. So that way we can double, if not triple, the company, since we're already on track of like 70%. For you, Forrest, what's the next 90 days for the operational side look like?
Yeah, so I'm really focused, like I said, on getting the previous owner out of the day-to-day. We're close there. We have 2 guys who are potential foremen. One guy's pretty much ready to be a foreman, so like a separate maintenance crew. So we'll have 2 separate crews running for that, one construction, one maintenance, and then having a operations manager in the wing. So we got a guy who we're training to do that next too. Part of him being promoted into that position is creating the SOPs for the group to say, hey, you go in, you learn this. Once you can kind of teach it and get the training ready, then you're going to be qualified then to take that step and be a manager.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so just making the operations more smooth, creating a GM that can operate the crews, and then I guess you want to duplicate that, obviously, that process once we get another business in the pipeline. And I know you talked about this for us in our last meeting, how you are doing the unit economics for basically how much a crew can make and how much our man hours cost and what we need to get to. Very strategic metrics that we need to follow in order for us to hit whatever revenue that you're looking to get to. Is, and you can speak to that too as well, because I know you were nerding the heck out on that.
Yeah, and I'm meeting with Ben to see how we can improve it too, because he's all about the profit. He's our CFO. So, the whole thing is like, if you can't get it right with one crew, if you get to 10, it's only going to get worse, right? If you're losing money with one crew, then you multiply that by 10 at 10 crews. So to avoid that pain, we get it right now with this one crew, and then we know exactly what we need to do to scale, and we can kind of build a plan out, because there's a lot of expenses that go into it. You got to buy a truck, you got to buy a trailer, you got to buy a weed eater and a blower, like for each one. But if you know what it is as a unit, then you can just work backwards from the revenue, the targets that you want to hit. So we're working on knowing exactly what the margins are.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Noble, you want to speak to that since you're the person that turned us on to it?
Well, no, man. Adam is amazing in terms of the book that we read. It was Empire Builders, pretty awesome book. And it lays out a good example on how to grow a company, and pretty much Forrest just laid it out. But yeah, it's a great book, man. So I suggest anyone to read that for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome. Well, I don't think I have anything else. Any final thoughts? Any of you guys have?
It's blocking and tackling. It's doing all the boring work in there, but you build it up one piece at a time, and then over time you can look back and you have a system. I'd say that's really the piece, is like laying the foundation beginning, so that long term it's not just a house of cards. Like you want to set a solid foundation.
Yeah, solid. Noble, anything from you?
Oh man, just continuing to improve and tracking your progress. I think that's one of the things that was in the book as well, is kind of tracking your progress and having the KPIs, having, knowing what's working, what's not working, adjusting as you go. And yeah, man, you just got to go for it.
Anything else, guys? Well, I appreciate you guys, hopping on in the conversation, and also appreciate the viewers and the listeners. Well, see you guys the next time, the next 90 days later. All right. See you guys.